Welcome to the podcast series Voices on Global Populism. I'm Begum Zorlu, a postdoctoral research fellow at City St. George's, University of London. This podcast series investigates the influence of populism on both global and domestic politics. In the first episode of the podcast, we explore Venezuela's contested elections, analyzing the populist strategies at play and their broader implications for global populist trends. So let's start with some context. In October 2023, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro reached an agreement with the opposition, and this paved the way for free and fair presidential elections. As a part of the agreement, the regime committed to following democratic measures, such as allowing international observers, while the US pledged to ease certain economic sanctions. The opposition selected Maria Corina Machado as its candidate after she achieved a victory in the primaries. However, just 3 months later, Venezuela's Supreme Court, largely dominated by regime supporters, declared Machado ineligible to run. Consequently, a little-known candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, was chosen to run as the opposition candidate against Maduro. The elections held in July further deepened Venezuela's political crisis. While Nicolas Maduro declared victory, his government did not release a full and transparent vote count. Opposition activists who gathered electoral data from polling stations, encompassing over 83% of the voting tallies, exposed a significant disparity with the official narrative. According to this data, Maduro secured only 30% of the vote, compared to an overwhelming 67%. Despite calls for transparency from the US, EU, and left-wing Latin American nations as well, such as Brazil and Colombia, Venezuela's National Electoral Council declared Maduro the winner without releasing the vote tallies. The contested election triggered widespread protests and a wave of government repression. The UN human rights investigators have accused Maduro's government of orchestrating a brutal crackdown, highlighting widespread violence, including the detention of minors, fatalities, and the targeting of protests and online critics. While Gonzalez today has an arrest warrant and has fled to exile in Spain, the crackdown continues. To discuss these dynamics, as well as the broader theme of populism in Venezuela, we are hosting opposition activist Tamara Adrián. Since the early 2000s, Tamara has been a prominent figure in Venezuela's political landscape. She is the founder and director of Diversity and Equality Through Law, and her activism spans across Latin America and beyond. Also importantly, she is Venezuela's first transgender member of parliament. Now we turn to our discussion that was recorded 2 weeks ago, where she shares her reflections on the political landscape and the populist regime in Venezuela. Thank you for joining us today. We had a conversation 2 years ago about the dynamics of protest in Venezuela, and today we're going to talk about the electoral dynamics. So just to start with, I want to ask you, how would you characterize the current political landscape in the country?
The elections were fair, were legitimate, not fair, were very unfair because they block the participation of Maria Corina Machado. They also, via the judiciary, illegalized most of the political parties. We were only able to participate with one party. They block all the ways to register the candidates, etc. So finally, it was Maduro who elected or selected Mr. Gonzalez, Edmundo Gonzalez, as the contestant. Basically, like 10 minutes before the closing of the time for registering a candidate, finally the system allowed to register Mr. Gonzalez. And they did it just like 3 minutes before the midnight, and was the time for finishing the registration. What happened? Maduro would have had preferred to have one of those other uh, 12 candidates that he promoted, but that nonetheless only had like 1% of the total ballots. The organization of the people was very impressive. People were very committed to change, and they promoted themselves as witnesses of the voting centers. They registered themselves for that. The witnesses have the legal ability to have a certified copy of the results, a copy certified by the voting machine. That copy has all the results and has at least four security uh, issues. One, they have two QRs. They have another code, and they have a security paper. So it is impossible to double them or to fake them. They uh, just took those results for because in about 15% of um, the electoral circuits, they were not allowed to participate. The militaries and the members of the party of Maduro did not allow them to legally be what was their right to be legally as observers and as witnesses in the process. They forbid them that. But for 85% of the voting centers, they were allowed to want to be there to collect the official results, printed by the machine with all the securities. Then what they did was to process that, to scan those results, those printed results, and to send them to the collecting centers, to safeguard the original and to transmit and to transfer them to collected centers. And what happened? The night of the election, Maduro suddenly ordered to because they knew that they were going to lose, and the results the machines were transmitting show that. They stopped the transmission, and they argued that they were hacked. There was no evidence whatsoever of that. And a few hours later, early morning next day, the president of the Electoral Council announced that with 80% of the votes transmitted to the electoral machines, by the electoral machines, Maduro was the winner with 52% of the votes. And next day, that was a Tuesday, they proclaimed him. In the meantime, the opposition had the opportunity to, as I said before, to scan all the results, the official results, to process them and to put them in a web page, in several web pages, by the way. And you can see your voting center, the results. You see the results, and you see the processing data. So what is the real result for this 86% or 83% of the votes that were collected by the opposition? That Maduro only got 29 something percent of the votes, and Mr. Gonzalez had the 69.8%. And the rest was those 12 other candidates, and some null votes. Then what happened? That 2,000 people were put in jail because of protesting, or they were targeted because they were members of these witnesses groups, or because they were part of parties. And what is the situation in this moment? Not until yesterday. Until yesterday, 2,000 political prisoners were in jail without the right to appoint a lawyer, without the right to see their family, with the right to have a fair trial, and completely uncommunicated. That was the fact until yesterday. I'm talking to you about 2000. Actually, it's 1,963, according to the Foro Penal Venezolano. Well, let's get rounded to 2,000. The International Criminal Court, ICC, went 2 days ago to Venezuela with a commission, and suddenly Maduro ordered to release around 260 of those 2,000 persons. I mean, about 10%. It's not enough, but last night, and I got information, 70 of them were actually released from jail. I don't know on which grounds. I don't know if they were just released with the trial continuing, or they were completely released. The information did not give me this detail. It's important, because if they were released just allow to be free, but not but their trial would have to continue, then they can be put in jail, back in jail whenever they want. If they were finally released with a judicial order finishing the procedure, and they are completely free. And so I don't know the details. I don't know if these 70 persons that were actually released from jail yesterday are free, or are just under a system that would let them to continue under the trial. Maria Corina Machado had to preserve her physical integrity, and she is hidden somewhere in the country. She is in the country. Around, we estimate that no less than 2,000 to 3,000 political activists had been forced to leave the country, including some 40 LGBTI persons that were targeted and menaced directly. And what do we have now is a very difficult situation. Maduro is intending to sworn again as a president January 10th, supported by the military, and that would mean that we will be in a full autocracy. He will be technically a dictator, and with all the consequences for the country and for him. I mean, I think basically that was the worst case scenario for him and for everyone. But they decided to go this way.
So what's the reaction from the opposition to this level of repression?
The democratic forces within the country are exhausted, are disconnected because of the fear, because they were meant to be put in jail, and then they hide many of the. We have like around 100 of the middle high politicians that are in jail in this moment, from all the parties that were fighting for democracy. And remember, the countries that are the parties that are fighting for democracy comes from the Communist Party, to the Social Christian Party and all the rest in between. I mean, from the left to the right. They are all together in a coalition, and around 100 of them are in jail in this moment. So people are afraid because the strategy or the tactic that used the government of Maduro was to create a menace to anyone to be put in jail on no grounds. Just okay, it's your turn. Like, go back, go, and they call that Operation Tun Tun. Tun Tun is knock knock the door. They just went and knocked your door and bring you. If you were not there, they can take your wife, your son, your family, put these people in jail until you are you're ready to surrender yourself. You know, this kind of activities. And as I told you, after 3 months, people are somehow disconnected, are exhausted, and are afraid. These three things. Nonetheless, according to the surveys that were released this week, 87% of the people believe in the opposition to gain democracy. They are the will to change still there for the full majority. 90% or 92% of the people believe that the winner was Edmundo González, and only less than 10% believes that Maduro was actually the winner. So people in general did not believe the fake results disclosed by Maduro, because they saw what happened in their voting centers. They were able to be there when you have these results, overwhelming results, because a 1-3 win it's very, very, very huge winning.
And how does the opposition see the international reaction to this process?
We have to force international community to make pressure. We know that European community, European Union, United States, Canada, and many other countries are committed. That in the case of left side, left-wing governments in Latin America, such as Petro in Colombia and in Brazil, Lula, they are both convinced that Maduro lost the elections and that he must pass the power to the winner. But they, at the same time, they do not want to take more action. The other countries in Latin America, the day after, 2 days after the elections, Maduro cut the commercial and relations and all the relations with Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Peru, Ecuador, Panama, Dominican Republic, Honduras, El Salvador. We are isolated in the region. We only have two friends, which are Cuba and in the region, Cuba and Nicaragua. You have this mixed feelings, or he has this mixed feelings, because they have publicly said that they will not recognize Maduro as the winner, as the president next year, unless he presents the actual evidence that they want, that he can't do. I'm talking about Petro and Lula. So what I foresee, it's a very isolated country with the probability of personal sanctions, with all the consequences of being an isolated country, which are uh, felt by the population. For instance, with the cut off the diplomatic relations and the economic relations with all those countries that I told you about. All the flights were also cut. So the flights from Venezuela to Panama, to Dominican Republic, to Ecuador, to Peru, to Chile, and to Argentina were cut.
Mm-hmm.
So we are basically isolated. In order to go from Venezuela to the United States, some people are flying to Spain and from Spain to the United States because it's cheaper and easier because of the law of the offer and demand. The two destinies that exist, that are Curacao and Bogota, are so demand that the prices are just crazy. A two-way ticket, air ticket, Caracas, Bogota, Bogota, Caracas, is costing more than $700. It's just a 1 hour, 30 minutes flight. It, it's something unbelievable. It has nothing to do with reality. And uh, isolated, with no ways to have a um, growing economy. Uh, wow, it's not a clear future that we have if Maduro remain in power.
And also about the strategies of international groups, so like ICC, other states in the region. What do you think they can do in terms of pressuring the government? So you also talked about the coalition that the government has with the military, which is helping for the government to stay in power. And what can international groups, states, organizations do in this regard to push for a more democratic process in Venezuela?
Okay, difficult question, but I will tell you this. One, back in the 40s, the Society of Nations disappeared because its incapability to react on the access to power and the World War II, Hitler access to power in World War II. They couldn't have any real actions to oppose what was happening. What is happening in this moment? It's a little bit similar. We have three main wars. We have around other 60 other small wars having place in this moment in the country, in the world. We have um, like 80% of the world population living in autocratic systems. Uh, Around 67, 70 countries in the world in this moment are autocratic. 20 of them have become autocratic in the past 10 years, and they have become autocratic using democratic tools, using democracy in order to defeat democratic and destroy democratic institution, and to get into a very autocratic path, sometimes in a semi-competitive autocracy, and in other cases as total autocracies, as they are in as we have or will have in Venezuela, starting January. So uh, the all those autocratic governments around the world that are not respecting human rights, that are violating all the legal um, international rules, are protected by the idea of sovereignty. And sovereignty has been like the shield for autocracies not to be confronted by the international community. I think if we do not change that, it is little that what we can do in order to defeat these 70 autocratic uh, governments around the world and to promote democracy. That's an unfortunate conclusion, maybe, but I prefer to be realistic. And to your question, what international community can do? In reality, very few. Not so much. They can take some sanctions. There is no evidence that ever a sanction had been able to defeat a dictatorship in the history of 20th and 21st century. They can put restrictions on commercial trade. That is not a solution, and at the same time that creates struggle for common people in those countries. So we have to reimagine uh, democracy. We have to reimagine also the actions of the international community. What is certain is that what we have now is not enough and is not good to take actions against those dictatorships.
I really want to link what you said about sovereignty to populism because the concept of sovereignty is core at the Chavista conception of populism. So, protecting sovereignty has been one of the key themes that has been used by the regime over the last 20 years and more. So, I want to actually ask you about this, about populism in Venezuela, because um, there's been a evolution since Chavez got elected to Maduro under now, but some of the characteristics also stay the same. So I just want to ask you, how do you see the populism of the current government, and how does it feed into its current policies? Um, and also, they have this distinction between the people versus the elites. So they always frame the opposition as a part of the elites and them as representing the people. So how does that hold under this circumstance where the elections are contested?
Well, actually, the populism is a way of action that doesn't have to do anything with ideologies. You have a right-wing populism, you have left-wing populism. It is a kind of action, a praxis of the government. Two, um, populism somehow remain the same and is not the same for a reason. When Chavez had was so lucky, was so lucky, because when he arrived to the power in 1999, the prices of oil barrel were around $9 per barrel. And just 3 years later, they rose to $150, and they remain surrounding those prices for around 6 years. So he had all the money of the world, and you can be an extraordinary populist particularly if you're a charming person and you have charisma. And Chavez had charisma. Everyone that met him is able to witness that he was a charming person, a charming person, good talker, and sympathetic, and whatever, la la. And this person, avid of power, hunger of power, and having the hugest income ever had in the country, or in Venezuela, um, for over 6 years. He was drunk of power, and he drunk of populism. He was able to gain all the goodwills by just giving money in Venezuela and abroad. So he was very sympathetic. He was very, very rich, and he was giving away with uh, no traceable, most of the time, not traceable possibilities, all the money of the world. I mean, we are talking about $100 billion. This is a huge amount of money. Unfortunately, nothing was left for the country. I mean, not a single new hospital, not a single new highway, nothing. I mean, no infrastructure, no nothing was left. Uh, and now we have this our government is the government of Maduro for 11, almost 12 years now. And what happened is that it was unfortunate for him, but the prices of oil dropped to uh, low prices compared to what they were in the past. I mean, from $150 per barrel, they dropped to 30 some in a moment. It's 3, 4 times what it was back in 1999. But of course, when you have created this status of expenses, there was not enough money, and it is very difficult for a poor government to contempt people, to have people happy by using populistic measures. And at the first moment, Maduro, what he did was to basically print money from the central bank, and to cover the lack of funds, and that created the period of hyperinflation. At the same time, he instructed the public officers to create a system of control of prices that was impossible to keep. And there was a time of a scarcity, complete scarcity of everything. It was 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, and even beginning of 20. Then they were able to make recede somehow the inflation by allowing people to use dollars to purchase things, and that allowed their friends also that had boxes of dollars in their houses kept there because they couldn't bring them out, to use the money and to laundry the money. And for like 2 year period, the hyperinflation recede. The prices were quite stable. The type of exchange rate was also relatively stable. And but of course, which was the cost of all that? The worst kind of economic adjustment that the same type of economic adjustment that is used by the far right government to cut everything, to cut expenses, not to increase expenses. Blah, blah, blah. So that is why, for instance, the wages for public employees have an increase in now in this moment for 1,300 days because they count the days. I mean, several years now without any increase of the wages, and the only way, and that's a populistic way, they have to somehow compensate that but not increasing the economic exposition created by um, uh, the rights of the workers is by granting bonds, what they call bonds, the bonds of the war. They call because it's an economic war against Venezuela, and this bond of the war is about $100 per month to around 60% of the public employees. Not all of them, because you have to be Chavista or make as you were a Chavista and register yourself in a registro de carnet de la patria. But that's not enough. The other populistic measure was to sell a very low price, what they call cajas clap, the boxes of food, subsidized food. But at the beginning, that worked. But now, the food they are distributing, it's of a very low quality, very scarce, and people are not happy to of what they get. And at the same time, the people are saying, no, I prefer not to have that and have more money, so I can go and to the market and have my what I want. And as I told you, populistic governments work as long as they have money. That's the huge difference between what Chavez did and what Maduro is now.
But we can also see the regime's relationship with states like Turkey, Russia, and then how it uses populist language to justify its role in international relations. So it forms the basis of the relationship it builds. So even though it cannot do populist policies anymore, I think the language is still there, and the opposition is framed there as the elite still, even though they've been in power for 25 years.
Yeah, the populistic and the discourse of sovereignty remain in place for all autocratic governments, in spite of how difficult the situation is for them. For instance, this same week we are in, for your for people that are hearing this in the week that is ending on November 17, 2024. We had in Mexico the summit of Cuenca with the Latin American countries, and every year or every 2 years they have this summit, and there is every time a consensus declaration. This time they didn't have a consensus declaration, and the reason why they didn't have a consensus declaration was because Cuba opposed to all the parts that were stating women's rights, that were stating about the climate change, because they deny climate change. They then deny that the climate change actually exists. And Other subjects. Venezuela was not there, but Venezuela was part also of the discussion, and the conclusion is that there was not a resolution, but what was the center of the discussion was sovereignty and the sovereign right of the state of Cuba to state that blah 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 blah, and to oppose to and uh, yes, for every autocratic regime, the use of the excuse of sovereignty will be always a good excuse, because under international law, sovereignty still remain uh, exists as a principle, and that's what I think must be somehow challenged if we want to survive during this 21st century as
And,
humanity. I'm talking about humanity.
and what about the framing of the opposition from the government? So they still use populist frames to explain the role of the opposition and how they differ from the opposition.
Yeah, they still say that, but when 80% of the population, 80 some, maybe 90, it's against it wants a change.
Mhm,
It is very now it's very difficult to maintain this kind of discourse, and even if they use it and they continue to use it in their propaganda sites and the propaganda and all the media, because they control all the media, the reality is that nobody believes that anymore. I mean,
mhm,
probably less than 10% actually still believe some kind of this kind of discredit based in they are blah 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 blah. Now we are like 86% of the population is a poor population. Middle class had been reduced to nothing, like less than 10%, and you have this 5% of highly rich people that all of them are close to the government, are
mhm,
part of the military, are part of, and people observe that, people uh, see that, people know about that. So
mhm,
the after 25, 26 years now, in January of this kind of discourse, uh, it it is not it's not giving the result it used to give.
mhm. So, can we then name this regime as a populist militaristic regime in a sense? Because it still uses the language of populism, but its survival depends on the military, and also maybe its international allies as well, and the support that they're giving could be instrumental in keeping them power. So has this regime evolved in a way that what keeps it in power is this three-layered
Yeah,
relationship?
you're right. And um, Anna Applebaum wrote a book that's called Autocracy Inc. And there she describes the relations between the autocratic systems and how do they survive by helping each other and by imitating each other.
Mhm,
And um, they learn from each other and they help each other. So you have this very um, large of 70 countries, the group of 70 countries that are autocratic countries, and they help each other, including Russia, Belarus, blah, 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 China, Turkey, blah, you have like, and they help each other, not only from the economical point of view, but also by by targeting the citizens when they go to those countries, etc. Two, you have the militaries, and in this case of Venezuela, the militaries do not exist anymore. We have after 26 years, what we have is a Praetorian force, not a military force that it's institutional. And this Praetorian force, where only ideologically committed persons are entitled to be engaged in this force, and what you have a strong purchase that seek for any dissidents, and they put them in jail. But at the same time, they allow them to be part of all the businesses. The not so clear, the clear, the legitimate, but they are now a part of the economic system, and they are part of this. The high rank officers are part of this 5% of very rich people. So yes, the second pillar is of course the military. And I would say that the third one is not only the populism, it's a mixture of many things. It's control of the population, creating fear, using populism for somehow have a happy certain number of persons, and all those three ways of action are the one that actually prevent people to protest. But they are no, I think, lucky enough to keep people silent all the time.
So I'll build on that and ask a last question, a personal reflection. So you have been continuing your work for more than 20 years, maybe more. And what gives you hope to continue your work in Venezuela?
What gives me hope is that I'm here in South Africa in this moment, and I may send it to you. I got a picture with a statue of Mandela having the same position that him. I think it's the same hope. It's that when you cannot accept the state of things, you have to act. Yeah. If you do not act, you become part of the accomplice of the group that is doing things you cannot accept. You say you cannot accept. So you have to act. You have to do it. You have to keep going. It's not like I have the certainty I will win. We will win. But we have won. I mean, we won the elections. He decided not to recognize the results. That's his fault. That's him to be blamed, and internationally to be known that he is a dictator. But what can we do as common activists, as common people, to oppose a very fierce regime, to create awareness, to continue to talk as long as we can, and to act whenever we can and wherever we can.
Thank you. That was a very insightful message to end the podcast with. So we'll meet in the following weeks, and we'll host Tuğçe Erçetin on her work on populism in Turkey. Thank you for listening.